So in today's digital ecosystem, so much of business strategy depends on using digital technologies in new ways, bringing changes not only to IT infrastructure, but to a company's operating model, products, and culture. The CEO and the CIO relationship is increasingly becoming more critical for a company's success, as we all know. Every CEO needs strategic thinking CIO partners to lead their organization through rapid change, drive technology-enabled business outcomes, and foster a culture of innovation throughout the organization. So that's the basis of our conversation today. But first, let's find out who we're talking to. So I'm Kathleen Kennedy, as you heard. I'm the former president of MIT Technology Review, which is MIT's media company. And today I wear a couple different hats at MIT, where one, at Sloan, I'm leading a research center doing research on collective intelligence, which is the intersection of AI and people and organizations. And then secondly, I'm leading a new learning platform called MIT Horizon, which we're helping large organizations manage through digital transformation and train their entire organization at scale. So I am super excited about this conversation, and I want to turn it over to each of my panelists, starting with Marina, to just a quick 1-minute intro around why you're here and who you are.
Good morning, everybody. Very happy to be here. I'm here because I think we are all missing this in-person connection, and there's no better way of learning than learning with colleagues. So why not take Alan's invitation and yes, fly all over from London to here to spend this day and a half together. My accent probably tells I am Brazilian and Italian, working all over the world in the last 20 and something years with 2 American kids, 2 girls, teenagers. So I'm taking a break from them for 2 days to be here. I had different CIO, CDOs roles. I was this global CIO for ABInBev, the PepsiCo Latin America CIO, and in the last 4 years, the global CIO for BAT, helping transform the industry and bring reduced risk products to consumers, but also connected products. And we're going to talk a little bit about it. That made it even more important, the relationship between my organization with the rest of BAT. Thank you for having me, Kathleen.
Oh, wonderful. Great to have you here. George, go ahead.
Yep. Good morning, everyone. My name is George Corbin, and as somebody who spends a lot of time in the travel industry, this is my first time in an in-person event in 2 years, and so I just want to say welcome, everybody. It's so good to see your faces, no matter how early in the morning it is for some of us. So I have been working in the digital space exclusively for the last 23 years, usually for large, disrupted incumbent companies. So I was Chief Digital Officer at Marriott and at Mars Incorporated. With that expertise, I was brought into the board of Edgewell Personal Care, which is a public company that has 25 consumer goods brands worldwide, because they're a company that's on a digital journey of its own. And today, I'm also the chief operating officer of a startup called Onriva. And Onriva is a patented travel technology platform, which is trying to take the pain, cost, and frustration out of the $1.6 trillion corporate travel management market. And what better time than a pandemic to do so?
Brilliant, George. Thank you and welcome. James.
Good morning, Kathleen. Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm delighted to be here in person as well. It feels like a new experience, I suppose, in many ways. But the muscle memory's coming back maybe day by day, right? So it's really nice to be here. I'm the CIO at Liberty Mutual. For those of you guys who don't know, Liberty is a local Boston-based company. We can see our headquarters building across the river, actually. We operate in some 30 to 40 countries around the world, primarily in the US, a property and casualty company with millions of customers, both in the US and elsewhere. I have a team of about 5,000 people who support digital enablement, digital transformation, all things digital. It's funny, I think every time I hear the word digital, it brings me back to when I started my career at Digital Equipment Corporation. Mm-hmm. I say how little things have changed in the definitions over the years. But nevertheless, here we are. I'm delighted to be here to be part of the panel.
Wonderful. Thank you, James. All right, so how we're going to structure this. I've got a bunch of great questions that I'm going to start asking the panel. We've got the Slido platform that I have up, and I already see there's a few questions there, so I'll start to interweave those. So as we go, feel free to add more there, and I'll pick them up. Let's see. So first question, I'm going to direct the first question to each one of you, but then feel free to build so that we have a good conversation. First up is going to go to George. So George, how has the role of the CIO, CDO changed? And also thinking about that, what are some of the most effective ways that CIOs, CDOs can partner with CEOs to help the organization?
Loaded question. So there was no such thing as a CDO when I got started in the digital and technology space. If I had to say the biggest change, it's this. So a CDO, CIO, CDIO, whichever the permutation is that we're using today in the alphabet soup, I would say that the biggest change is that this is now the company's transformer in chief. Because ultimately the job is a transformational job. Now the problem is that 70% of transformations fail. We know this is for a variety of reasons, but we can take this away. It's usually not because of the tech. It's because of other factors. And these other factors are the things that are, in my view and in my experience, now the most important part of the job for somebody who is in that role. It used to be that essentially you would develop a roadmap and you would kind of lead the plan, but today what you're trying to do is you're trying to actually create and lead a movement across an organization. It's how do you find your coalitions of the willing to help drive something forward, because it's not just about the tech anymore. I kind of liken it to you have to at the same time be the ship's helmsman and the ship's engineer. So you're up on the bridge, setting direction, navigating the storm, and at the same time, you've got to be down in the engine room actually making things work, patching and fitting. And the other thing then, as a part of that, is the real change is we used to think that our job is to change the technology and the data architecture, but that's one of really only 3 architectures that it's our job to change. So certainly the data, the tech, do we have the core infrastructure, do we have the APIs, all that stuff that we know and love and consume our days on. But the other, and this one has proven crucial for us, is business model architecture. That's everything from product strategy to distribution strategy, intermediation, how we go to market, a whole variety of things that directly impact others and impact our job and our ability to be effective at our job. And then the third architecture is really human architecture. And that's the architecture that gets into how you're organized, how people are incentivized, culture. Is it a culture of fear? Is it a culture that promotes innovation? All these things are 3 architectures that a CDO, CIO, CDTIO, whatever you are, you're a transformer. And it's 3 architectures basically that today we have to tackle simultaneously.
Awesome. Any comments on that? I've got my next question ready.
Just to build on that one, I fully agree. And in the end, it's the CTO, Chief Transformation Officer, that we are all playing a role. As I think what has changed that led to that is that if you think as a CEO and the amount of things that they have to do, with their board, with the investor community, with the community in general, of course, with the broad organization, the number of things that they talk about that comes directly from our offices to them has gone from maybe, we're helping on cost savings 10, 15 years ago to now they're talking about revenue growth, new business models, they're talking about the culture of the organization, talk about new products. So I think the need of this close relationship of the CEO and the CIOs, whatever it's called, because they cannot have a conversation how they're performing their role if our office is not feeding into them. I think this has also, required not us only for us to change how we present what we are doing, so can be translated to these audiences that we were not talking to that much before, but also help educate them and the other C-suite executives, because this is valid for all the external and internal stakeholders that they have.
Got it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of good points there. maybe I'd just add that clearly as we approached the pandemic that we didn't see coming, we were already on a transformation path where there was a lot of emphasis on digital transformation. And I think that there's been a realization across all businesses and almost every industry that the technology is the powertrain of where the business needs to go. Almost every single business, I think, has found itself in that position. And clearly the pandemic has just reinforced that in many ways. So a lot of it, George, you mentioned, I think you have to get a focus on the business process first, simplify that, make sure that you're very clear on what the steps are, and then enable it through the best possible experience. And I think that a couple of things have really helped that move along at pace, right? One is the journey to the cloud, right, which has given us all platforms to test and learn, and then to scale as we see the things that work really well that delight the customer base. I think, again, you guys mentioned it, the concept of the technology teams and the business teams working hand in hand, everybody now working in agile squads and agile business structures. That has really eliminated the handoffs that traditionally you would have seen between business folks and technology people. And that's what has allowed us to go much more quickly. So I think that what's the relationship between the CIO or the CIEIO or whatever version you want and the CEO? I think it's become a much closer relationship to really focus on what can technology do to get us there more quickly and to change the experience for our customers. And we'll talk a lot, I'm sure, during the day about how data and machine learning and all these things play a part in it as well. But I think first and foremost, there's been a realization that technology is no longer, and hasn't been for a long time, the back office. It really is the powertrain that drives where you want to go and gets you there quickly.
Awesome. So let's pick up on something that was an underlying theme here. And Marina, I'm going to take this to you first. In thinking about some of the challenges, as well as the success in fostering a culture of innovation in your team and across the whole organization.
Yeah, it's a good one. And I mean, together with Agile, right, you cannot think that without innovation. So you need this spirit of now you're going to manage a portfolio of initiatives where the portfolio will pay off, but not each initiative individually. One of the things that I keep making it parallel to some of my colleagues is that, think about the marketing team, how many product launches they have had that did not reach the minimum threshold of, revenue. Look to the supply team, how many partners that they work with, source from, that not necessarily deliver the products that they, that the company organization, and you can see where I'm going with that. You think of every business function, kind of leadership for hundreds of years is used to, we're going to do some things that are going to work and some that are not going to work, and the overall results are going to be good. I don't know why, but with technology for many years, people could pinpoint exactly every single project that we did that did not go on time and on budget. But why that? We don't do the same with the other functions. So why I'm saying that is because I think it's a big challenge, because we had this thing that was so obvious for the rest of the organization that, innovating means learnings and successes, not just successes, failures and successes. But this was not native to our organization, and more important, how we were perceived by others. So I think this is the big challenge that we have to overcome in bringing the culture of digital innovation, of Agile across the organization. I think the success is, technology has evolved in a way that we don't need to plan something for 2 years, 3 years, big solution, and then another 3-5 years to roll it out globally. We can do things truly in sprints and already see the value. Mm-hmm. So I think leveraging those experiments that very quickly, it's not going to be you or your team, but it's going to be a great marketeer, it's going to be a great finance lead, it's going to be a great GM, talking about the success of the subscription digital product that you brought live, the loyalty digital product that you got live. And then you look to this huge set of digital products that we now have to offer, and you have the voice of running digital innovation is a success for my organization being said by different leaders in the organization. So I think that's the journey of bringing digital innovation across the organization, is putting the word in the mouth of the other leaders, And then eventually, by the way, with a higher success rate, I think, than marketing products usually have. I'm sorry to say that. For marketeers, I love them all. They're great partners, but you need to have this hurdle different also for technology. And I think innovation process now is allowing that. We need to grab into that, do not let go, because I think it's a good wave of becoming an organization much more open to experimentation than traditional IT organizations were perceived by other leaders.
Cool. George, I want you to build on that, and I'm also really curious about your experience going from sort of Marriott, huge global corporate, to a startup, and that cultural difference. How does it feel?
There's none.
There's none.
So it's interesting, and I do get to think about it. Actually, no, I don't get to think about it. I get to live it every day. And I would say this. So I've worked at Marriott, I've worked at Mars, I've worked at Edgewell. These are companies that are 90 to 100 years old or more, hundreds of thousands of employees. And now I'm at a startup, and it really has served to validate something that was a conclusion I made at the big companies. First of which is this: fear kills innovation. And it's not the overt, don't screw up, or you're a goner type of fear, although sometimes there's that, but fortunately not in the companies I've been with. But it's in the sense that most companies have now been wired over the decades to wring as much risk out of the system as possible. You find an operating model that functions very smoothly. All the gears are turning. The way that now kind of metastasizes is that innovation has an impossibly high bar out of the gate. If every other part of your business is generating $1 billion, your idea better generate $1 billion. And we're going to give you, maybe we'll give you 12 months, but maybe we're going to give you less. And at the first sign of trouble, at the first setback, you second guess, and often you cut and run. Culture is an operating system. And so creating an innovation culture means, hey, we're all in technology, so we think about the code. You've got to recode. You can't just refactor the code. You're going to have to recode if you're going to upgrade that. So if your business now requires that it has to operate differently, and we have all seen the placards about we're going to be innovative, and everybody can get the laminated card, and everybody can get the tattoo on their forehead, and we're going to be innovative. But the fact is, if you don't go in and start changing your culture operating system, and that is everything from how goals are set, into the incentives, into how you're organized, into how and who you hire and fire and develop and retain. And it involves, you're gonna have to make some hard choices. Because sometimes, the thing that got you here, what got you here ain't gonna get you there. What it has been, so now to give the big contrast. Mm-hmm. So in a startup, so at Onriva, I would characterize it as CFAST. So C. C is clarity. It seems obvious, of course. Be clear about, first, what is the problem? What is the struggle moment that you're solving for your customer or for your employees? Be very, very clear about the solutions, because there's a dozen. And by the way, whenever you identify it, everybody starts hanging baubles on the tree until it collapses under its own weight. Be very clear about the outcome you're targeting. That is, we will know we were successful if we deliver this particular business outcome. And the fourth piece of clarity is, be very clear about who is accountable for it. Who holds the R? In a RACI chart, who holds the R? Know who the R is, because guess what? And this is what I found in corporate environments. Everybody thinks they're an R. Everybody who comes to the meeting thinks they're an R. Everybody thinks they've got a vote. You don't. You're consulted. You are informed. But there's going to be one R. There might be two when you move into dev from design, but there's going to be one R. The other one, so part of CFAST, is F, is for focus. And this is one, again, large companies really, really struggle with this. I struggle with this. And you got teams of 5,000 people. They struggle with this, right? But focus, what we've done to boil it down into sort of startup clarity, is we use a term that was derived from the New Zealand America's Cup team in 1995, when they were the first ones to successfully wrest the cup away from the US in 150 years. And they had one guiding principle for everything that they did, in every project, and every investment. And that principle was, they asked one question: will it make the boat go faster? Everything else strips away. No scope creep. Does it make the boat go faster? So that's the other thing. A is for act, of course, but for us, what does that mean? Done is better than perfect. Perfect never launches. S is for speed. So we've been talking about agile. Our entire organization is built on a 2-week cadence. Every 2 weeks, whether you're in engineering, whether you're in marketing, whether you're in sales, 2 weeks, what have you got? And checking on the status of that. And the final one is T, which is tolerance, in this case, fault tolerance. And this is another one where in big companies we struggle with it. But when, not if something goes wrong. When, because something always goes wrong. Trust me, in a startup things go wrong, but in a big company things go wrong. They just take a lot longer to happen. But what do you ask? I've been in companies where the first question is, who screwed up? So you're trying to create a culture of innovation. That doesn't fly. What you need to be asking is, what do we learn? What are we going to do better this next time? Because we're getting started again in 2 weeks. That has been sort of really, really crucial for how you remove the fear from that. And these types of principles are what allow you to kind of, I mean, this isn't just a startup thing, right? This is the type of thing you can apply really, really anywhere. So that would be my observations.
Awesome. James, talk to us about your operating system of culture at Liberty Mutual.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna steal that one. That culture is an operating system. I like that, but at Liberty, I think we're in the risk business.
Yeah.
That's the business we're in. So we really are focused on how do we stimulate people to take risks, and make sure that they don't feel like, okay, you're going to be penalized if something goes wrong. And we need to do that mostly by setting the values and the vision and kind of getting out of the way. I think there's, okay, so we have a lot of teams, a lot of people. There's no way that the senior folks can know all the things that are going on. You can't monitor and support every idea. You have to create that culture or that model where people feel there is the latitude to try something out. And we also need to be able to demonstrate that when things fail, and they do, that nobody got shot, right? Yep. And that, we did. What did we learn? I love the way you put it, George. What did we learn, and how do we apply it to the next thing? I think there's another key part for us insofar as being such a large organization with some core products that do indeed generate billions in revenues. When you're thinking about innovation and the ideas that people have, sometimes it is easy to get stuck because you say, well, it's not going to create $1 billion in the next few months. It's only going to be a little bit, but then we can build on it. That's also something that's hard. You have to be able to incubate something, nurture it, give it a little bit more, support it. One of the things we've learned as well is that you have to pivot quite a bit. So you start off going on a particular journey and you think you're going to a particular location or outcome, and you realize that, wow, I didn't quite have the perspective of the customer on it. I didn't quite understand what the need was to the degree that I need to, and you need to change and maybe build a new set of capabilities to further advance the idea and continue to kind of grow it and mature it. But I think the main thing that we're focused on is making sure we kind of get out of the way. Even when we know somebody's idea, even if we don't agree with somebody's idea, sometimes you have to let them go and give it a chance and try. Even if you say, well, I don't really agree with that, but let's see how they do with it, and then let's see what we do next. So a lot of the culture is around supporting the risk-taking, allowing people to try things out and change along the way, and then figure out, okay, does it have the potential to scale over time? And I think the final thing I would say is, again, if you're in the big mothership, sometimes it's very hard to allow something that's not in your core product set to be worked on and built on. That's maybe one of the hardest parts of innovation and risk, because somebody might have an idea that's not core to your product set or the mission, and then do you allow it to continue, that it might grow into something completely different? Or do you say, well, no, that's not where we're going? I'll give the example, I think you probably also saw it in the last couple of days. Jeff Bezos still carries around the front page when people talked about the fact that he was going to try out the AWS idea, because obviously that wasn't core originally to what they were doing in e-commerce, but a completely different idea. And that's a really hard thing to support, even more so than process improvement and product improvement innovations in your current base of stuff, right? So I think that's maybe the hardest part for me to think about.
Oh, yeah. No, I hear you. I remember actually we had Jeff here. Gosh, was that back in 2003, 2004, when they launched AWS? Mm-hmm. It was really exciting, but I remember at the time it was like, you're a platform that sells books. Mm-hmm. What about that Kindle? That was the other thing. Right. They were shopping around at the exact same time. Right. That seemed so core, but now AWS transformed the whole business. So there you go. So we're going to be agile here. We're a group of agile folks that lead huge teams that do agile things, and we're going to actually quickly go through some of these questions that everyone here in the audience is wondering about. So I'm going to just read through them fast and have, just play bingo, pick up one. So the first one is, what circumstances would behoove a company to establish a position of a chief data officer? Who wants to take that one?
I can take that one. In the last 3 companies I worked for, we did not have a chief data officer at the C-suite level, but in my organization. And it was something that did not exist, and I always elevated from lower in the organization, because someone has to own. I think this idea that different data sets are owned by different functions, that doesn't mean that they stop having the responsibility on the financial process, on the sales process, on the marketing process, on the supply chain process, but someone needs to be coordinating, because I think we all would agree that the beauty and the value of data come in really breaking the silos and going cross-functional. So if your organization doesn't have one, broadly, the CIO organization, I think, should have it.
Awesome. Building on that one, there's one related, so maybe, George, if you were going to say something about this. How can a chief data officer figure out business use cases for the use of data?
So I'll go up a level first and say, so first of all, I agree with everything you said. Somebody, whether chief's in the title or not, depending on the size of the company, someone has to be accountable for it. Now, the question is, accountable for what? There's so many dimensions and facets of this, right? So there is certainly all the data management, the data engineering, all the things that come in, so I'll call it the more technical sides of the job. But so getting to this question about use cases, that right now is the biggest struggle that I'm finding with companies. People have been throwing around the words data for so long that sometimes those who are not living and breathing it don't realize that the bigger question is, it's really this. How do we build our intelligence as a company and activate it, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. And that's where the use cases sit that, frankly, marketing should be thinking about and sales should be thinking about. And if your digital function is separate from your technology function, they need to be thinking about that, because it really comes down to, and this is where you're seeing the successes of companies that put data, and I would say intelligence, in the center of their operating model, because they activate it across the enterprise. This whole notion of saying, to understand how to use data, go to the data person. Let the data person tell us what to do with data. It's like, no. If you're in marketing, and I'm also run marketing, the primary issue that I see people struggling with in marketing is that they are so contemplating their own personal brand navel that they don't look up and say, what are my customers actually struggling with, and why am I losing them? And how do I know that? Do I know why they're leaving? A lot of times we don't know why they're leaving. Why? Because we're not employing the data that's sitting under our own noses to look at this and say, we have high attrition throughout the customer value chain at this moment, this moment, this moment, because we've got all these different friction points, and apparently they're hating this and they're hating that aspect. And I've worked for companies that didn't see this and got disrupted by this, right? So in hotels and in shaving and in candy and snacks and all that, this was what was going on. And that type of activating of intelligence has to exist across the organization. So what I would say is, if your company isn't getting that, and that's probably the majority of many of our companies here, a really good chief data officer can be a catalyst if they're able to, if they're of the personality type that it's just not about the data and the technical aspects, but they can go talk in the business language to these different functions and ask these questions like, why are you losing customers? Do you know why? Let me help you find out why. Let's go do an experiment. Let's go do a test. Let's go do a use case. There's many opportunities to do this. Completely changes the relationship, the game, and brings data to the front, rather than it being some sort of basement backroom operation.
Agree entirely. I think there are multiple dimensions of the data stuff, so it is important to have somebody who's accountable and focused on it full time. Whether it's the technical stuff. I'll go back to one of the things that George said earlier. It's a little bit like a product. Perfect is never going to get launched. More true than ever within the data realm, right? Because we have troves of data going back 40, 50 years. And some of it is not in great shape, right? So some of it's got holes in it. Some of it you have to, we spend as much time, probably spend a lot more time preparing data to be used in things like data science and machine learning models than we do the actual model work itself. So the kind of the preparation work and all of the simple stuff takes a lot longer than you think in order to get things ready for the modeling. So I think it's really important to have somebody focused on the entire value chain of data, know how we're going to do it. Couldn't agree more on the use cases as well. It's very important to understand, is it your intuition or do you have facts? And the data supports the facts, right? So there are many times when people think we know why our customers are acting the way they do or disappearing out of the funnel or whatever it is. You need to have data to be able to support what that assertion is and to also test and learn. I think that's a really key part of it as well.
Awesome. So let's stay with you, James, and go this way. What's the role of the CIO in managing the growing number of digital services that you've got partners all around the world and all different groups within the organization, managing these services?
Well, a huge facet of that for us is reuse, right? Focusing on not building the same thing 10 times over, right? So particularly if you're operating in multiple markets with similar products. So we sell insurance products all over the world. Yeah, there are different regulations, different laws, different expectations in different countries, and different channels as well. So we operate direct to consumer, through agents, through brokers, all the different models. Very important, though, that we can figure out how do we optimize, build something once, and ideally use it all over the place after that. So that's probably becoming more important than ever in the construct of the theme of the conference here, where we're talking about digital ecosystems, right? So very important that the CIO and the entire team are focused on how are we connecting with partners, potential partners, ecosystems of different flavors and varieties, which leads you directly to things like API enablement, making it simple to both plug into other ecosystems and have people plug into yours. Some of this stuff we've been doing for a long time, right? So, when we have a new prospect who wants to insure their car with us, right? We do a check with an external connection to say, okay, well, what's the claims history been for this customer, right? So that gives us a sense of the risk and so forth. And there are many other checks that we do as well in order to prepare the data to give the person the best quote that we possibly can. But we don't want to do that again multiple times. We want to be able to reuse all that stuff. And the same thing with inbound connections to us. So, recently we've been doing a lot of work with the gig economy platforms. And we do that by enabling them to call us and ask us for information about claims or whatever, without us having to do anything special. So we use the same kind of connection points internally for system to system as we allow external people to talk to us. So I think overall, the CIO needs to be focused on what operating model you have, which partners are you trying to connect with, how are they trying to connect with you, and making sure that you reuse as much as possible everywhere you do business.
Great. I want to jump into this next question because I just love it. Marina, we'll start with you. Tell us about a technology or initiative that you're particularly excited about. Either you're planning it or you recently implemented it. And then focus a little bit on the risks and rewards.
There are many.
I bet.
So let me pick. Maybe I think that's one of the things that I love about, right? I'm not in an organization, none of us that are managing 3 big projects that is 80% of your budget. Yeah. We have all those digital products and data and analytics products all over. So in a way, it's good because, it means it's working, that I doesn't have one thing that comes to my mind. So I'll talk things on both, growth and the other one on more, branding, because in the end, it's all about the consumer. On growth, I'm very excited because we piloted last year a connected device of the reduced risk products to consumers in 2 markets, Canada and the UK. And this year, we're going to be scaling up. It means helping consumers for the first time, exchanging online information on consumption with consumers to help them get the migration out of risk products. So I think I'm super, super excited. And this is true in the end. The IT department is in the product in a consumer goods companies. For other business, of course, you have always been there. But for consumer goods, no, right? We were always supporting in the end a product that was a static product going to the hands of the consumers. And now we are part of the product delivery. So I'm very, very excited because that is commitment of the transformation of the organization. And I think to the previous question, when I got to BAT, it was something that was happening without the IT organization. This bunch of, marketing agencies and whatever trying to work with the product team, but that would never talk back to the systems and the insights that we have as an organization. So I had 2 failed attempts of nothing could work on a connected device. So I think this is one I'm super excited because it's to deliver to the purpose of the organization. And the other one, it's less about growth, but it's about learning. We launched already 2 NFTs, artwork, from the marketing campaigns that we have. We sold them, and the resources went to charity. So again, very old school business in BAT, but very ready to experiment something that for now we are not thinking of any line of revenue of business there, but we cannot afford not to be there. And I think a few years ago we would say, oh, that's not for us. Maybe 10 years from now we're going to have that conversation. This is starting now and we are part of that. So I love that because people get excited that they see that big organizations can also be nimble and do things. Still, long way to go, more to transform, but it's not just a dream and something on a PowerPoint that eventually we are going to be more forefront and cutting edge. So this is happening already.
That's awesome. George.
Well, my favorite technology project is the one that I'm on. That's why I joined a startup. That whole thing is a technology project. And so, why am I excited about it? Well, in this case, you look at the travel industry. Everybody loves to travel. It's worth trillions of dollars. But it is so fragmented and so heavily intermediated that there's $400 billion of inefficiency a year being spent and paid out to this player and that player and the other player. It doesn't need to be. And yet you also have this high dissatisfaction rate, depending on what part of the industry. You've got a 50 to 70% dissatisfied with the experience. And so working on a technology that has already connected 2.5 million different providers, it is taking cost out of the system and it is signing up customers and they are happy. And so that's my fun technology project.
All right, James.
Yeah, I think lots of things. And I suppose the first thing, it gets back to the experimentation. We're trying out just about everything as we learn about it. So whether that's been building blockchain applications or augmented reality models where we use the Oculus and other devices to maybe overlay to help our loss adjusters identify potential risks in environments so that we can understand what that risk is and price it, and help our customers not to have bad things happen, right? So I'm very interested in some of the things that we're likely to see happen over the next several years, and the so-called metaverse, or as we do more meeting virtually. We've been trying it out. It certainly has a long way to go in terms of replacing an in-person scenario or whatever, but I think the potential is amazing. Another area that we're spending a lot of time on is computer vision with machine learning models to help us detect things like damage to property, whether that's your automobile or your home or your factory or whatever it is when storms come through. So we're able to use that technology. It saves money. It helps us get to our customers more quickly and solve their problems by resolving the claims very, very quickly as well. So I think that there's a lot of cool technologies out there. It's important to, I think, match the investment in the new technologies and what your expectations are with that maturity and when they can, give you some payback. But you gotta try out everything along the way and at least learn enough to say, all right, this one is not ready yet, but we'll revisit it again maybe in 6 months or another year or so forth.
Awesome. All right, we are going to do the speed round now. There's 2 questions. I'm going to take this last question, which I think is a really good one for the speed round. George, we'll start with you. Name one factor that most frequently derails IT projects.
One?
Yeah, one. Just pick one.
Have you guys go first on that? Okay, so I'm actually going to go with, I'm going to go back to my point about clarity. And what I mean by that is so often there is a discrepancy between what the sponsor thought they wanted, what the requirements actually specified, what ended up getting prototyped, what ended up getting built, and finally what launched. And there's fingers getting pointed all along the way, and often it comes back to there was insufficient clarity up front on what it was we were really trying to solve for, and what the business outcomes were that we wanted at the end of it. The team did heroes' efforts to build this thing.
Right.
But they were building the thing that it turns out wasn't really what the sponsor wanted.
I agree with that, and I'd build on that to say another aspect, which I think is maybe the other side of the same coin, is you didn't spend enough time examining the process that you were trying to improve or define it clearly up front, that people went to, let's build straight out of the gate without enough time and effort on exactly what are we trying to do and how. Have we simplified the process to the degree that we can first? So I think that can happen a lot.
Just to add on that one, for me, is resistance to change. I still am amazed, after so many years working, how people let, individual emotions play into, it was his idea, not my idea, it was the headquarter, and not, it was that market and not this market, it was this function. I don't know if it's the idea that you really need to spend time on getting people to be fully invested in the initiative, and people, I mean, everybody from different layers. I think sabotage is something that, is a strong word because it's not really that thought to, but that's the one that comes to my mind because people's emotions just make things go wrong. So you need to funnel the emotions to the right side and to the outcome.
Marina, that's a really good point. And just to add to that, I'm going to append to my response because this is so critical. An important thing is, even if it's the greatest project with the greatest intent, you also have to step back and look at who is going to lose something as a result of this. Whether it is job security, you've got somebody who sits on top of this manual process for the last decade. Who's going to lose? Because you have to, that's the soft side of the equation that you absolutely have to tackle because that can undermine the most brilliant of technology initiatives.
All right, I think on that point, I just want to say, I hope you all win. I hope that you enjoyed this panel and it gave you some interesting insights. I know I'm taking away culture as an operating system, and done is better than perfect. And with that, I'm going to pass it up. I want to thank my panel so much. You all were wonderful.
Thank you.
And pass it back to Alan or whoever needs to take it next.